Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, my precious pack, and welcome back once more to VEGA Conflict. I'm going to give a few thoughts on the downtime notes, the current state of the game. I'm going to go ahead and read off right from the forum, the notes, share my thoughts, and I'm going to share something that I posted the other day on Discord. The reason I'm sharing that here instead of sharing it in Kick-Size Discord or anything like that, honestly, I don't want it to be removed or anything like that. Now, it is a rant. Well, kind of. It brings up 2 points, but mostly it's a rant. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to point out 2 things after I read the forum post for the downtime notes and this little post that I made, which is actually 2 in 1 because it was too long for the single Discord post. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with the forum post. I have it pulled up in the back here. Rebels, as another month rolls by, our next game update will be released on Sunday. Look out for the Gargoyle Carrier, the first Umber Carrier, and yeah, I have thoughts on that as well. In the Vestige monthly event. Okay. Also keep an eye out for the Lunatic Cruiser utilizing Marauder-converted wreckage from Wraith cruisers, which will be available in the Alliance War at the end of April. Anyone wants to read stuff about downtime can. The Alliance War, yeah. Okay, the Gargoyle Carrier. It comes with a weapon called the Hammer Missile. And then you have buffs for the Pharmakon, which I will address very soon, but in the Vestige event you can pick up the phase drain buffer and decrease drain rate and increase phase duration. And the Altairian Blitz event, don't miss a second chance at Victoria Onin and missing tech from your arsenal. Okay, mobilization, gather valuable Mark 2 to Mark 6 materials for the Gargoyle. And pick up, okay, so the mobilization comes with the other one, which is the phase charge relay to fine-tune your battle strategy. Which in other words is just specials to buff the already overpowered phase state of the Pharmakon. Content changes, ship, weapon, blah blah blah. And then just a bunch of miscellaneous bug fixes, which I never read through myself anyways, just going over them, it's mostly just bug fixes as it states. Okay, first off I want to talk about the Gargoyle Carrier and the fact that all carriers have slowly stepped away from being carriers and are acting more like standard ships. Let's go ahead and let's actually bring up the Sovereign Carrier for this because it is the best example that I have for this thought. When I think of a carrier, I don't think of something that has conventional weapons aboard, and yet that's exactly what carriers have become. They're carrying conventional weapons. We didn't see any Altairian squadrons. We haven't seen any Umber squadrons. Pharmakon's just cloning and stealing squadrons that were already in the game because, as Toxic pointed out in a post, a comment, there's the Nightingale has already been used in outposts a while back for some of the alien outposts. And I completely spaced off and forgot about it, and it is. I completely forgot, so again, one more reason that they weren't the ones that developed it, they just stole it. Again and again, the same item is just being reused and stolen instead of having new models be created for it, which takes time, requires coding to be put into the game and put into effect. But again, I doubt that'll happen because it seems to me as though carriers are moving away from a potential damage case, but their primary buff should have always been their overdrive to be able to enable their fleet to dish out massive damage, take massive damage, or repair their ablative or something like that to make them more versatile. Instead, we have carriers that are being focused on sheer aggression above all else. In the case of the Sovereign, cyclotron beams and no Altairian squadrons were released, so we still had to use drones. We're now into the Pharmakon getting drones, and again, there is no new drones for them, it's just reused technology of the same class we've had since tier 6.5. And here we are 3 factions later, and again, squadron technology isn't advancing, instead they're being phased out in favor of conventional weapons on board carriers, which originally carriers, they had set movement buffs, things like that. The agility field, the phase shifter, and the other one for increasing damage versus shields and reducing health damage. But again, here we are slowly shifting away from those to carriers that are offensively based and that aren't carriers, but they're carrying conventional weapons, and they are in turn just another ship type that we already have. They're superior to a destroyer because of their range. They're superior to, well, just about everything due to their damage. You can only have one per fleet, and that's your saving grace, that you can't have an entire armada of nothing but Sovereign Carrier Mark 6s. But that's about it. Again, we haven't seen a new squadron since tier 6.5 when the drones were introduced. We haven't seen any Altairian squadrons, which I do think that they should be given their own squadrons that are more powerful than the drones that the Axis created, and everyone should stop replicating the drones that the Axis created and make superior squadrons, including the Umbra with their carrier, which I'm going to reclass every single one from tier 7 and above, because they're not carriers, because they weren't introduced with drones, they were introduced with conventional weapon systems. And it doesn't seem right to call them a carrier, because most of us were not going to use drones on them, because the drones are useless. They die too easily, and by the time they get to the target, and by the time they begin firing, most of their health is gone, so the damage is just completely meaningless. And we're most likely going to use heavy weapons, just because they're going to deal the damage from an extremely long range that only other carriers could reach. And with that, what am I going to nickname the new class from tier 7 and up for all the carriers? I'm going to call them the... let's see. We could call them advanced support vessels, even though it's not true, because they can more or less tank everything that everything else can. So you don't really need a cruiser to protect a carrier, because the carrier can have more hit points, as is the case with these guys. Bastion, 28,000 hit points. Sovereign Carrier, 30,000 hit points. 37,000 shield points. 43,000 shield points. Yeah. Well, they're no longer carriers, no matter how Kixeye wants to see it, until they introduce new squadron types produced just for the specific factions. Instead, what we have are conventional vessels that are just under another guise, just as everything else is, and we're just getting more reused content from a lower tier. Hammer missile, I have no idea what it's going to do. But, as it states, it's a missile. And you know what that means? It's going to work exceedingly well with Victoria. Because missile speed boost, missile AoE boost, yeah, it's going to be a good time. And it's most likely going to have a blight variation, just because it's being introduced with Umbra. Okay. Enough about the carriers not being carriers but being conventional ships. Let's go ahead and let's talk for a minute about the other things I want to. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read off what I have posted in the Discord. And with the downtime notes, I see that the already dominant and unopposed Pharmakon are growing stronger, with 2 new specials to enhance their phasing. What was the point of the Renaissance garbage truck again? To dish out damage at close ranges to reduce the phase charge speed? Well, the balance of the ship is present to a degree in PvE, because most targets will come to it, and it doesn't have to chase them down, because, in all honesty, it can't chase any Pharmakon ships down. It's too slow. But PvP is a vastly different story, as many of us have already seen. The Renaissance just gets owned by everything. And in PvP, people aren't going to be attacking you head on. They're always going to have a mix of ships to deal with just about anything you can throw at them. And since it's Pharmakon, it's going to be all the more superior and most likely take no damage in return. Well, they negated the already restricted vessel's combat ability by adding specials to increase the phase charge time, well, the speed, and reduce the phase drain. 2 specials to do just that. So when, if ever, will they start to add new Altairian specials to help them counter Pharmakon's ability to phase without needing to fire actively on the target? Because so long as they have to fire actively on the target, it's not going to cancel anything, it's not going to resolve anything, because most of the time, the target's going to be phased out, and you're not going to be able to actively fire on them. You're not going to be able to actively hit them. Where's the balancing aspects? They should be present in the rock, paper, scissors system. I'm still tired, and I need to sleep more, I can just say that. Or at least sleep better. Between the factions, there is no balance between them. Right now, Pharmakon is the, more or less, it's the top tier, regardless of what Kixeye says. I have seen better balancing using the Marauder vessels against the Pharmakon to greater effect than the Altairians. The Pharmakon's Blackguard cruiser, thanks to the range of the weapons and everything like that, you can outrange the Daemon battleship. You can just outrange it. You can't do that with the Bastion. Even if its overdrive activates, it can't outrange it. With its normal weapon system, you can use Nova and you'll barely outrange it, but most of the time the target's going to be in phase anyway, so you just lose your shield, start to bleed out. They're in phase and you can't fire on them, and your overdrive just deactivates because they're in phase the entire time your overdrive is active, effectively negating the effect of the overdrive. Now, I know that the Altairians were never part of the rock paper scissors system because they were added before the rock paper scissors system was thought of. But treating them like a child among the adults is just wrong, and enhancing what they should be dominant against but are incapable of opposing isn't a way to make an RPS system. What is going on is the same events that have taken place before, with the newest tech being vastly favored and more powerful than the previous variations. Again, not a rock, paper, scissors system, but an incline system where the newest and most powerful faction sits at the top. Hopefully changes will balance the Altairians, but until we see positive changes to the Altairian vessels, their specials, and their overdrives to counter phasing, we don't have a proper rock, paper, scissors. We don't have a proper RPS system in the game, and we're going to continue having problems going forwards until Kixeye balances this. And whenever I think of rock, paper, scissors, I don't think of some, oh hey, paper beats scissors under these certain situations, or rock beats paper under these certain situations. No, it's not like that. Rock, paper, scissors has always been simple. It's always a straightforward, there's always one countering the other with no negative impact towards the backlash. Now yes, this is an RTS game and we need counters and things like that to be active in the game. We need small things like this to change certain aspects of the game. We need some balance so that no fleet is truly invincible or unbeatable. But as I've already found out, I can go through the vast majority of targets in the game with just 2 Daemon battleships, and I can beat everything and take absolutely no damage in return. Now, the targets that have superior range and things like that, you're always going to be hit and take damage. But that's where the screen comes in. It's virtually impenetrable, and it's just... it's disgusting how the rock, paper, scissors system has turned out thus far. And giving us the Renaissance Battlecruiser, it was a step in the right direction, but it wasn't good enough. It was a poor excuse that should have been... it should have been more carefully handled. They should have tested it extensively before giving it to the public. It should have gone through phases where the players were updated on what was happening, but it wasn't. Instead, we got a ship that its overdrive is utterly useless in PvP. And for certain PvE targets, it excels, but again, its overdrive is lackluster. It requires receiving damage over time. And remember, everybody, the point of the shield was to ensure that less damage over time was applied. And the fact they're telling you to take damage over time is a just complete waste of time. Because so long as you're taking damage from a ship that is virtually indestructible to begin with, there was no point of having a system like that. They could have done any number of other things that would have been more efficient. And the path they chose for the Renaissance, it's It just goes to show that they don't care, because what should have been a dominant ship and could have been extremely dominant in PvP against the Daemon, instead, as we've seen from certain clips and certain videos, it can't catch it. And this is where I bring up another note that I didn't mention in the video or in the post or anything like that before I finished the post. They're phasing out cutters because they say they no longer have a place in the game or some stupid nonsense like that, and they just want to dispose of them. Well, allow me to share something with every single one of you. The only vessel that I've seen that's been able to catch up and run down a Daemon that isn't PvP based was the Cavalier Cutter, just because of its overdrive. It has been the only one that I've seen that can run them down when they're out of phase and hurt them. The only one. Bastions can't outrange them and they die to them extremely quickly. The Renaissance is just a joke. Anyone that's stupid enough to send a sovereign carrier against a fleet of Daemons is just asking for it to die. You will be able to do a little bit of damage during the initial time frame where their phase isn't quick enough to just completely negate the charge time of your Psychotron beams. And anyone who's smart isn't going to put drones on a carrier anymore, because one barrage from a Daemon at Mark III with its weapons fitting will just completely obliterate them. So that was just effectively a useless weapon slot that you wasted. The destroyers would be able to counter them because they do outrange them, but they can't turn quickly enough to maintain active fire support on a Daemon when it's out of phase, because all it has to do is just rush to the side of them, stasis them, hit them extremely hard before it phases out again, and it's gone. Your destroyer is gone like that, and it never had a chance to fight back. So this is one ship that has effectively countered everything from the Altairians in PvP, but when it goes to PvE, or PvP fleets, the Marauders, every single one of their ships that I've seen thus far, they can effectively put the Daemon down without any problem. And that's because of how Kixeye has balanced the PvP ships. They're just... I'm at a loss for words at the stupidity of how far some people can go to balance a game. And PvP ships are going to be the ideal counter to Pharmakon, not whatever Kixeye says. And until they buff what they say is going to actually counter them, we don't have a rock, paper, scissors system. We have an incline system, as we always have, where the lowest tech is always the weakest and the newest faction is always the strongest. That still holds true to the Pharmakon being the strongest. And with the introduction of Victus, these new specials, and various other aspects of the game that I expect them to release at some point or another, Pharmakon is just going to be dominant, and the Altairians that have damage increase and stuff like that, that damage doesn't mean jack diddly if they can't hit the target. If they're incapable of closing in on the target. If they're incapable of actively firing on the target. If they're incapable of even looking at the target. They're not a counter. That'd be like me breaking one of my fingers just because something was wrong with it. Why would I break a finger? Because something was wrong with it. It still has many other uses. Oh hey look, it's got a little cut on it, so I can still pick everything else up with it. Doesn't mean I'm going to break it. Well, the Altairians, as I pointed out in the post, they need specials. They need buffs. Their overdrives need to be reworked. And do not sit around and wait until after this is all gone over and you're introducing a new faction. Just say, oh, we'll rework them later. Whenever something is put off, it never happens in VEGA conflict. As per the previous development team, or as I'm going to bring up one of my favorite posts from an extremely long time ago, and for those of you that remember this, remember the daily missions reworked that I always mention that never happened? Yeah, I do. I still have a screenshot of it. I still have that screenshot. I'm not going to share it because I don't need to anymore, because a lot of older people, they'll recognize what I'm talking about. It was one of the aspects of the game that never happened that would have been extremely beneficial to the player base. Just like right now, what would be extremely beneficial to the player base is buffing the Altairians. Instead, they're giving the Pharmakon new technology and stuff like that, and there is not a single mention of anything for the Altairians. And we're still stuck with the Renaissance battle cruiser, or as I called it, and I'm going to enjoy calling it, the garbage truck, because it gets hit by just about everything from every single angle. The model is just larger than the actual ship in game, and when you watch certain missiles, they should pass right by without hitting it. Nope, they explode in the air around it, because apparently its hitbox is twice the size of the ship. It's a joke in PvP again. And a lot of people say Kixeye doesn't play their own game, and I hold true and support that concept, because had they played their own game, had they had top tier tech, had they fought Altiarians versus Pharmakon, they would realize, oh hey, we've made a horrible mistake. And that's me putting it politely, nicely, so it can be posted on YouTube. Okay, time to finish with the post, and I'll get on to final thoughts, things like that. For each of you that reads this long-winded rant or opinion, think about the difference between a Bastion shells and a Trojan screens. The Trojan has more physical defense, screen energy, at Mark 6 than a Bastion does with the same shells, well, with its shells, at the same mark level due to the 4th screen slot being given to a Trojan. The health value of the Trojan is also higher at the expense of something else, such as weapons, specials, or maybe you just don't equip thrusters because it doesn't need them. You don't equip any type of other unique, you don't equip resistors or anything like that, because most of the time you're not going to need them. Most targets aren't going to be able to touch you because you're going to be phased. You're going to pop up behind them, shotgun them, and disappear. Because that's what you do. That's all you do. That's all you need to do. Because that's exactly what Kixeye's made. And for any of you who are wondering what I'm talking about, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you exactly what I mean about the Pharmakon. You can pick and choose your targets. And you can pick and choose where you take damage. That's your choice now. It's no longer a system of, oh hey, you have to take damage to beat this target. No. In the vast majority of cases, you can just avoid the damage unless the target outranges you by 10 to 12 fold, which is still the case with certain targets. Kixeye is just... they haven't balanced them. There isn't balance within them. And I'm going to show you 2 Daemon battleships just completely decimating a Miscreant 100. And no, they're not going to be Mark 6 or anything like that. They're just Mark 2. 2 little Mark 2 ships. These 2 right here. And you're going to see these 2 completely decimate an entire fleet of Roomba ships, which they should counter, without any threat to themselves. Or I'm going to do them better than that. I'm going to hit the Breacher 100. And I'm going to crush the Altairians that are in that fleet. Because where's the fun in just making fun of them when you can actually show the imbalance? What should be a counter to the Umbra is just going to be crushed by them. And it's even more hilarious because when you see it in combat, you're going to realize, oh, they're not balanced. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to quickly bring up a Breacher target, and I'll bring you all back in just a minute. This is where hilarity ensues, everybody. When a class of ships is so powerful that you only need one of them to destroy this fleet. Just one. And that's seen as balance. I don't need more ships than these 2 Daemons to destroy everything here that you see. Why? Because I just don't need additional ships. That's all I have to do. Just fire a volley at them, run away. Fire a volley, 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 run away. That's all you do with the Pharmakon. You just fire a volley, run away. Fire a volley, run away. Fire a volley, run away. You know the saying of rinse and repeat? That's exactly what we're doing here. Oh yeah, and the Altairian ships just died. That explosion, that was them dying in the Blight Nebula because they wanted to catch up and fly through it. Instead, they died. when a ship is so powerful that you can take mere seconds of repair time from a very, very high level target with only Mark II ships, you know it's imbalanced. And all you do is just fire and run, fire and run, fire and run. Because you just don't need to do anything else in the game anymore. When I think of an RTS game, I think of something that is mentally challenging, with many curves that you have to overcome in order to master the game. Instead, we get a ship that you just do this with, and you effectively don't have to do anything else. You just kite the AI all day long and farm whatever you want. Overseer 150, yeah, you can just drop some net torpedoes on the little guys in there and just decimate them, and then just go into the blind spot behind the freaking dreadnought and just sit there. Because you can do that. You can do all of that. And you never have to worry about repercussions. Because when stuff starts to get too close, you just phase out and run away. And then you re-angle and you attack again. Basically, no repair time for that fight. And I can go through the miscreants, and I've gone through the breacher fleets before and taken no damage just because all you have to do is just time everything. With the Pharmakon, it's all about timing. You can destroy everything without taking damage in return due to the travel velocity of rounds in the game. By the time your round reaches the target, they're already phased out. You can't damage them then. You can't hurt them. You can't do anything to them at that point. You can just stare in awe as your rounds chase the target through phase and do nothing. How much repair time for that? Minute 30 seconds? Oh, that's nice. That's free repair time. That was just using 2 ships to destroy an entire 100 fleet. Without the segfault, what level is that fleet? 76? Level 76 fleet. And they literally just destroyed an entire level 100 fleet for 1 minute 30 seconds repair time. This is why all features that are introduced into a video game, no matter how entertaining they may seem at first, should always be thoroughly tested. They should always have counters in the game. And I mean hard counters, not this little joke thing we've got called the Renaissance, where it just slows their charge time down. Well, slowing it down if you actively shoot a target that you can't fire on doesn't really help you. I built an entire Mark V group of Renaissances for anyone that's curious, just so that I could more or less show what happens to them in PvP. And I'm going to let them all die. I'm going to actively attempt to close in on the targets and destroy them, and it's going to fail. Again, because they just can't keep up with the targets they're supposed to be fighting. Again, and this is where I actually like the Cavalier Cutter's overdrive over this Renaissance. Let's just take a quick look at it. Right off the bat, it has stasis resistance, unlike this thing. It has an overdrive that is specifically meant to enhance its survivability. Because it gets hit by stasis, it instantly gets 5% energy regeneration for its shield per second for a few seconds. And if I'm not mistaken, that time increases as you mark upgrade them. As well as all of this gets better. And then it gets shield defense. So, you know, it gains... It literally is made to counter the Pharmakon. It gets increased movement speed so it can close in on the target while they're out of phase to make them go, oh no. It gets 65% stasis resistance at its max rank. It has no recharge delay. It has nothing like it. It instantly starts regenerating a shell the second it starts to get stasis or anything like that. And I found this to be extremely useful, even though I don't use any of the standard ships. I have PvP Cavaliers, whatever their name is. I can't even remember it now because I hardly had to use them. But whenever I'm out farming for prolonged time frames, the fleet that people don't notice is the fleet that's attached to my jump ship. You know, the purple jump fleet thing, that one. It typically sits in my planet, and if anything's going to happen PvP related, I'll jump out and counter them because I can guarantee it's most likely going to be a Pharmakon battleship. This is why you do not phase ships out because you say they're no longer part of the meta or anything like that. If you don't play your game, you have no opinion on your game then. You're just adding technology and you're talking about your game. That's alright. But when you start to say that something's no longer part of the meta when it's the only thing that can catch a ship because you're too incapable of balancing something so simple as movement speed, then you can't say that something needs to be phased out because they're no longer useful. This is useful. This is very useful. This is very useful. This is useful. This is useful. Everything about the Cavalier is useful. And then you look at the Renaissance. Okay, same movement speed, same everything like that. Same damage, everything like that against battleships. Well, it lacks stasis resistance. It lacks just about everything. It lacks forward movement speed over the Cavalier. The Cavalier is more efficient because it has that movement speed, it has the stasis resistance, it has just about everything you could need to be able to catch up and run down the Daemons. And this brings me to a final closing thought. Now that I've had more time with the Renaissance battle cruisers, they're more useful against cruisers than they are against battleships. I would recommend that Kixeye change the damage type from the increase against battleships to cruisers. Make it so the battle cruiser is specifically meant to destroy cruisers. Because I would send this thing against Trojans all day long because it does counter them. It does an exceedingly good job of that, even in PvP. Especially with the increased rotation speed. That allows it to keep on target the entire time. However, one thing I would like to recommend about its overdrive to be changed, increase the amount of phase charge time further than what it is at Mark 6. Double it if you need to, but make it so they can force Pharmakon players that have already applied the damage over time effects to remain out of phase as long as possible. Because as long as they're phased, again, you're not doing anything to them. And again, change the battleship damage type because it's never going to be able to catch them in PvP, and people are going to want to counter them. Make it so it hunts down Trojans because that will be more efficient for it. And that's it, everybody. I just wanted to more or less go on a rant, and that's probably what the title of the video is going to be. So for every single one of you that watches this through to the end, you can rant in the comment section with me if you want. I'm not going to tell you not to for once. But that's going to be it, everybody. If you have anything to add to what I've said, or if you have any suggestions for buffing the Renaissance, the Altairians, new specials for them, things like that to give them an edge against the Pharmakon, specifically to counter phasing, because that's the problem right now. When they do catch the Pharmakon, they can hit them like a freight train, but the problem is they can't catch them. So, think primarily on how to counter the ability to phase through specials, overdrives, things like that. However, do not suggest they add new ships, because I do not want to have to farm a new set of cruisers, battle cruisers, carriers, destroyers, battleships, or anything like that just to counter Pharmakon. They need to buff, and we need to emphasize this, they need to buff the stuff we already have to prolong its lifetime, so we're not going to be farming for more stuff that we're going to have to pay to use. Or for anyone that does pay to use it. But keep your minds open, think of as many possibilities as you can, then think of the balancing within the game, see them in the back of your head, countering the Pharmakon, then understand how they countered them. Then explain that to everybody in as vivid a detail as you possibly can. But that's going to be it, everybody. If you have anything to add, go ahead and say so below in the comment section. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. If you just want to rant like me, go ahead and do so in the comment section below. Just don't attack other people, because it's one thing I don't say enough. We're here to create a community driven by the player base of games, followers, things like that. We're not here to argue or bicker with each other. We're here to converse, share ideas, share thoughts, and chat. That's what we're here for, and that's what I want to see. And if you guys want to see, on that note, more videos like this, feel free to subscribe to the channel, browse through the lists. There's plenty for everybody. There's a little bit of first-person shooters in the form of Ark. There's a little bit of RTS games, a lot of RTS games. There's my thoughts on various aspects of VEGA. There's my thoughts on various ships. There was at one point a playlist I started working on for the newest tier ships, and that was the Wraith. And I don't remember, I never finished it. I did like one video on the Wraith, and it was the positive aspects. I never talked about the negative aspects or anything like that, of which there's very few. But I'll get back to all of that. But for now, everybody, stay safe out there in the void, and as always, I'll see you later.